a massive win for free speech. And I'm very pleased to be talking about this because this is actually quite massive. And I was taken aback by this, if anything. And of course, it is this tweet by Elon Musk. If you are unfairly treated by your employer due to posting or liking something on this platform, we will fund your legal bill. No limit. Please let us know. Which is absolutely monumental if he actually goes through with it, because that will mean that Twitter will have an advantage over pretty much every other social media platform in that it will be able to defend free speech to a level which no other company can, because of course, world's richest man can cover your legal bills. Who's really, realistically, as an employer, going to want to go up against that? So it's probably not going to come to court if this actually becomes a practice. And I think that there's actually a very good reason for this, because people may look at this and think, oh, Elon's being very benevolent. But I think actually, this is my sort of speculation, if you will. Please let me know what you think. But I think there's a very good financial reason for Twitter, now called X for some reason, to do this. And that is that it's excellent marketing for them, in that, yes, there may well be a financial incentive here. And that is, if they're seen to be visibly and publicly defending people who have fallen afoul of their employers, well, people are going to have confidence in the platform that they are secure in voicing their opinions, which has been one of the sort of flashpoints of the culture war more generally, that people are scared to say what they think publicly. And you see this amongst many political commentators, sort of in the more online sphere. They're hesitant to even use their own names. And why would that be? Obviously, we at Lotus Eaters do use our own names, but it doesn't come with its own without its own hardships. And so I think that if people are more comfortable saying what they think and not having to hide behind an identity, although I fully support online anonymity, I'm not doing a Jordan Peterson on you and saying, these terrible online trolls. I don't care about that. I think online anonymity is far, far more important than that. So just as an aside, but I think that actually this proposition by Elon Musk is very well thought out, and I think actually serves both public discourse and Twitter more generally very well. What are your thoughts? I suppose
King Elon saved every one of us. I'm joking, of course, but it's quite a noble thing to offer, right? I mean, I've never seen any other billionaire or mogul ever offer anything like that. I mean, it's sort of unbelievable in a way, but good luck to him and any people who take him up on it and win their legal cases. Brilliant.
I think it's on the face of it, it sounds like it's resetting where we used to be with the internet, where people could just say stuff and without fear. Hopefully, it will mean that whistleblowers can talk about their company, if their corporation that they work for is doing wrong, that they can reveal it. And presumably there'll be a number of cases which will obviously be the test cases to see if Elon will actually honor that. But once companies realize that basically it's putting your dirty washing in public, and many companies perhaps will not want to do that. So an employee perhaps who worked for Gillette a while ago, who thought the woke way that they were doing the adverts for the best a man can have, which pretty much destroyed what a man was, who might have wanted to say, actually, I disagree with the company's approach, he will now be able to say that. And the Asda bloke who was sacked for retweeting, I think it was a Billy Connolly tweet some while ago.
I didn't hear about that one.
That's probably about 3 years old now.
Okay.
And it was a joke, but he lost his job. And all those people who've innocently retweeted something or have something to say, I think that's great. I mean, if it's as genuine as it seems, and we have to take it as face value, it's going to be interesting reading the bloody comments, isn't it?
I know, yeah.
But I saw Anthony Cumia, Anthony off of Anthony and Opie.
Oh, yeah.
I saw him reply to Elon saying, someone I know retweeted something I'd said that was spicy, and they got fired or they got cancelled in their private life. Help them out. So if Elon does it, and there's, let's just say, a few test cases, it might be nice, mightn't it? It might reset us a bit. Do you remember when we were younger, or not even that long ago, 10, 15 years ago, most people, nearly everyone in the West, were sort of free speech absolutists. It would be weird to say, no, I don't believe in free speech. Obviously not talking about libel and real cases of defamation things, not including that. Shouting fire in a crowded theatre, not including those things. But beyond that, everyone was just sort of an absolutist when it came to free speech. And now we're in this strange sort of hellscape where you can't say anything or you're treading on eggshells at all times. If this even resets it even a tiny bit, then it's a wonderful thing, in my opinion.
I think the most insidious thing that's eroded that old attitude you're talking about is changing the definition of harm. And this is something that actually has a lot of legal weight because, of course, a term so subjective because, of course, you can define psychological harm in particular as anything you really want. And so it gives you enormous power. I would say physical harm is where we should draw the line because ultimately you're in control of your own mind and you choose ultimately whether something harms you or not psychologically because, it's sort of mind over matter, if you will. Although I believe that, consciousness has a material basis in the brain, so that's a very ironic thing to say. But you get the point I'm trying to make, that these sorts of things in changing definitions, these sleight of hand underminings have eroded what used to be the case. And I imagine Elon Musk must remember this himself. And so this is a very, very important thing. And it's worth mentioning as well that the mainstream media did pick up on this. And here we have Forbes, among many others, talking about it. They added some previous details about it's not entirely clear how this is going to be set out. But what is clear is that there is a very long trail of bodies in a sort of hyperbolic sense of people who have fallen victims for speaking their own opinions. And I'm going to go through a few of them just to highlight just how important this is. And first of all, you have, it's difficult to feel bad for Hollywood actresses, but Gina Carano, famous for comparing, I think it was, COVID policies to the mid-century Germans. I'm calling them that to not fall afoul of YouTube censorship. But yes, she lost her job. I think it was in The Mandalorian. Former MMA fighter, John says. Yes, that's worth pointing out as well. I can't believe I forgot that. But yes, she's lost work. Also, the journalist Majid Nawaz as well. He's currently suing LBC for sacking him over tweets about the US's election in 2020 and the COVID mandates. And so, yes, he very tangibly lost his job because of, and a lot of money, so I hear, because of voicing his opinions. And he's meant to be a commentator. And so you've got to question, well, if it can come for people who talk about their opinions for a living, then it can affect anyone, can't it? And here's a good example of someone who wasn't involved in politics before his encounter with being cancelled. And this is James Esses, who was expelled from his master's degree for talking about medicalization of children. This is from the gender ideologues, the transitioning kids sort of thing. And so he got kicked off of his course, and he's actually been in a couple of exchanges with Elon Musk personally. And I have actually... He has, yeah.
Did we have him on?
Yeah. And speaking of which, if you move on, John.
Didn't you interview him?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, that's right. Okay, right.
Here he is. I had an interview with him, so if you want to hear his story, make sure to check it out. But yeah, he's a very good bloke, and I fully support what he's doing. He clearly... he's also back on the podcast soon, according to John. But yes, I think he's got nothing but good intentions, and I think if you could go and support him and also watch that interview.
It happens all the time, though, doesn't it? I saw a NASCAR driver just the other day.
I'm just about to talk about that.
I should look at your links before I start speaking.
That's all right. This is a president of Thomas Jefferson University resigning after he liked a tweet, I think. He liked tweets critical of the vaccines, gender-affirming surgery, college diversity, equity, and inclusion offices. So just liking tweets is apparently enough to make you lose your job. And quite an esteemed job, I would imagine, as well. And talking of that NASCAR driver, here he is. NASCAR driver Noah Gragson suspended from racing due to social media conduct. And what he did was he liked a rather insensitive meme, which I'm going to show everyone. Here it is. This was on Instagram, I think. It was a picture of George Floyd on the crab from, what's it called? With the mermaid.
Little Mermaid?
That's the one. I can't believe I forgot that. It's very hard to remember stuff when you're on camera, I find. But yes, I mean, this isn't exactly comedy gold. But I also don't think someone should be suspended from their job because of their poor taste in humour.
Because knee rhymes with C.
Yeah, it's not a genius coming up with this sort of stuff, but nevertheless, however distasteful we find it, we should defend people's right to like what they like.
Yeah, of course.
And here we have potential complication, if you will. This is a Wisconsin teacher who was fired for a private tweet, and she was complaining about not allowing her class to perform Rainbow Land with Dolly Parton and Miley Cyrus. And she said it was an extreme and punitive overreaction. But this is, as the name suggests, Rainbow Land, a clearly political song. And if Elon Musk is offering this up, and one would presume that he's got employees at Twitter administrating this sort of policy, then what's to stop them from favouring people here, for example, who seek to indoctrinate children politically? Because she was fired for a tweet. So
wait, what happened? She didn't let them do it? Or
no. She wanted them to, and she tweeted about it,
right,
complaining, and then she got fired for it.
Okay.
But it's basically a song that's meant to be about accepting LGBTQ plus, and because it's in a state where you're not allowed to push that sort of thing on children.
So she got cancelled from the other side?
Yes.
From the based side of the aisle?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right.
This is sort of a cautionary tale, if you will, because I don't agree with what she's doing, but you could argue that she has a case that she was fired for something she tweeted that is seemingly innocuous.
Right.
And so it could be a sort of poison chalice. We see it as being on our side, per se, because normally we are the victims of persecution. However, as with many things, in actuality, it could well be a tool to further tyrannize us, potentially. And I don't mean to,
She shouldn't be fired. I mean, regardless, I mean, you said it earlier, it's that whole thing. Whether you disagree or agree with somebody's tweet, they shouldn't be fired for it. If you give them enough rope, they'll hang themselves. And if she's putting over something that's rather horrible and shouldn't be happened, I agree she should be able to have her say, but people hopefully will see through it and say, well, it's a horrible thing. I don't know why you're doing it, but I'm glad I know that you're doing it. And I'm glad I know that's what you think, because I shall avoid you.
Yeah.
But she should have her right to say, even if we disagree with it. Otherwise, you're having a one-way system, aren't you?
Absolutely,
That's a healthy way to do it, because this slide towards, let's get you fired. Let's have your bank accounts closed down. Let's have you even publicly shamed. I mean, you're getting very close to sort of Maoist era things, getting very close to being publicly shamed. And then you're publicly humiliated physically. And that's the path it goes down.
And you don't want the public to accept that public shaming, because that's what they've got in China. If you misbehave, your name comes up on a screen. Well, we don't want to get to a point where we find that okay. It might have been all right in the old days of the stocks when people can throw tomatoes at you. We certainly don't need it now.
Yeah, being physically pilloried, or in the Great Leap Forward or the Cultural Revolution, you're sort of half lynched or murdered, or actually murdered in the end.
We've grown up, hopefully.
I would like to think so. But to use the example of China, actually, there is something quite insidious in because the social credit scores are administered individually per each city. So they have different rules, but one city, I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but they punished people's social credit score for associating with people who had low scores, which, is a manifestation of that same impulse, but in a very formal and government regimented way. And so that is what I want to avoid at all costs, really.
But this is where it's that thing about, if you have an opinion, it's perfectly fine to have an opinion. you don't have to be. If the opinion isn't of the other person's opinion, it doesn't mean they're an idiot. And we've seen that. If you don't share my opinion, you're an idiot.
Mhm.
I don't care if you don't share my opinion. This is my opinion, and we can debate it as grown-ups. And a lot of people don't share my opinion, and I have no problem with that. That's a healthy thing. That's why we can have a healthy debate about something. Because if we're all of the same, we're all on the left or we're all on the right, and we just have our own echo chamber, it's very boring.
I find that the best approach really is going by sort of case by case basis on an individual basis, and extending an olive branch. And if it gets thrown back in your face, well, you'd be like, well, I tried, and I'm not going to make that mistake again. And I think that that's how you do it, because I know many people who have said they're socialists who have actually had very civil and interesting and constructive conversations with me.
And people change their mind. That's the thing that we often forget, because people might have a visceral reaction to something and say, oh, no, I disagree with you. You're an idiot for it. But a decade later or 10 minutes later, they may have thought that through and gone, no, actually, I overreacted. Actually, there's part of your argument that I actually agree with, and there's other parts that I feel uncomfortable with. I think we should let people have that ability to change their mind and get over themselves.
I think when it comes to changing someone's mind, I don't think it actually happens in the moment. It's very rare that there's a sort of exchange of ideas and then they go, you know what, you're right. You'd think they're being, silly, or they're being condescending to you. And it's normally there's this conflict, and then they go away and they think about it and they ruminate on it for quite some time, and then eventually they change their mind. Like, for example, when I went to university, I went in relatively left-wing, sort of left liberal, and came out relatively right-wing. And that was through actually talking to other left-wingers and just realizing, wow, these people are horrible. I don't want anything to do with them. And I reevaluated my entire worldview, mainly because I valued politeness and they were not polite to any disagreement. And I was just like, well, there's no need not to be civil if this is what people are really like. And many of them were very condescending towards actual working class people. And it seemed like quite a strange juxtaposition to be, on the one hand, a defender of it. And so I went away and did a lot of thinking, ended up reading about economics and all sorts of things. And now I'm completely out the other side. But it's through these sorts of exchanges of ideas. And that's why they're so important, because I think although sometimes an exchange of ideas can be futile, depending on the individual, there are people who can be won over or at least put on the right path and take themselves there of their own volition. And I think that we shouldn't necessarily give up on that, because if you give up on trying to convince people, trying to have a free discussion, then that's the end of civility as we know it, really. You need a free exchange of ideas. Otherwise, all that's left is hostility and violence. And I don't think anyone wants that.
People absolutely need to be able to evolve and change their mind. Normal people can't be expected to be sort of ideological zealots from the moment they become an adult. That's not fair. That's not normal, actually. Normal people are not subject to like a party whip. You need to be able to change your mind and evolve. And everyone does, actually. Nearly everyone does. I think there's something slightly wrong with you if you have the exact same views in your 50s or 60s as you did when you were 18. There's probably something, arrested development or something going on.
I very much agree with that, yeah. You've got to be allowed to change your mind.
And just to say, this is, just to state the obvious, this is the thin end of the wedge of just thought crime, thought policing, and you end up with what China has, where you will lose your liberty for having the wrong thoughts. And well, it's Orwellian, isn't it? It's truly, in the direct sense, Orwellian. In fact, some of the things the CCP do are, George Orwell didn't even go that far in 1984. It's beyond that already in some cases, in some ways.
And I personally believe that no one is a legitimate authority enough to tell people what they can say, or even think, for that matter. That's, even more so. And I don't know whether this sentiment is shared, but I would like to think it is.
Well, if we're all equal, who is above us to tell us what we must think?
At least in the sense of we all equally have a right to have opinions, right?
Well, yes, of course. But but if man is born equal, then who's to tell that man what he can or can't think or do come to that matter? It would be a consensus of the group that would decide what you perhaps would do, i.e. have rules and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But to have a free opinion and to challenge authority or other people's opinions has got to be a good thing. Because even though your challenge might be ludicrous, there might be something in there that the other party hasn't considered. And that's how you develop.
Well, I think it's useful, even if you feel like you've made up your mind about the person that you're discussing with, that you disagree with. It's still good to understand where they're coming from, even if it's purely from a basis of, well, I've encountered these ideas before, I better understand them, and so I can come up with more compelling arguments against them. And there are many good reasons for it, I think. And so I'm going to just quickly fire through a few more examples because we are slightly over time. Here we have a case that the Daily Mail's reported on saying, video game firm fires woman after trans activist publicly branded her a transphobe for following conservative accounts and voicing excitement over Harry Potter game. And the funny thing is that it was the excitement over the Harry Potter game that she presumes is the reason why her employer was contacted, because it's a games developer. And so if people are getting cancelled over mainstream franchises and their enthusiasm for them, it's getting beyond absurd at this point. And here we have another example that it can affect anyone. Take That singer Howard Donald apologizes after liking series of offensive tweets. And here, the Huffington Post says, Pink News reported that Post called for people to defund Disney. Is that offensive, is it? Alongside a photo of a Pride concert being held in one of the company's theme parks. While another argued that no woman can have a penis and no man can have a vagina. I think this video is going to get demonetized on YouTube. Another of these tweets that Howard reportedly had liked claimed only women have periods, and to suggest others, including non-binary people and many trans men, also do so is insulting to women. He also reported having liked tweets from being supportive of former US President Trump and influencer Andrew Tate. So, yes.
Times are bad when they're coming for Howard. Right, even Howard,
the canary in the coal mine for free speech. I've always said this, that Howard Donald is, our cultural bellwether for the health of our democracy. So it is worth mentioning as well that it's not just Elon. As Toby Young points out, replying to Elon Musk, the Free Speech Union has done this sort of thing already to a certain extent, at least in Britain. So if you're in Britain, they're certainly someone to reach out to if you're having troubles. And I very much support the work they do. They're doing some great stuff. And here's their website. We're not in any way, affiliated. I'm just recommending them purely because I approve of what they do. And if we move on to some of the alternative platforms to Twitter, of course, YouTube, which many of you are probably watching this on, has some very, very stringent guidelines on how to produce your content. And we've fallen afoul of them, even though we tried our best not to do it and had to move lots of the conversations we would have had on YouTube onto our website, simply because we didn't want to fall afoul of the guidelines and have all of our work taken down. And I imagine that you have fallen afoul of this as well.
Well, I have. And that you say they're stringent guidelines. It would be useful if they actually told you what those guidelines really were.
The actual writing of the guidelines is very subjective and wishy-washy, but they enforce them quite stringent.
And they apply it retroactively, which is the most mean-spirited thing. They'll change it, and that applied in the past now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's crazy, actually.
And if you have a video that has something in it that they're not happy with, it would be nice to go, okay, I accept that I'm on your platform. These are your rules. I'll edit it out. But no, either the video is taken down or you're demonetized or you're given a strike, which, depending on how many you've got, means a certain amount of time off the platform. And the fact that you can't just simply make amends, I think, is reprehensible. Because I would be more than happy if I say something that they don't like, I can say, oops, I'm really sorry. I'll take that out. Let's take that out, reformat the video, and let it go. They're still making money off the back of it. I'm still keeping that video there, and hopefully the advertising is bringing in a bit of revenue for me, and everybody's happy. But the fact that they give you this whacking great slap round the face, and you when you challenge it, they just go, oh, it's medical misinformation, for example, thanks to the WHO's rules. You go, but what bit? Tell me so I don't make the mistake again. But they don't.
It doesn't make any sense, really. I got a warning on my small channel, History Bro, once for hate speech. It was, and the video was simply World War II footage, archive footage. There was no speech. There was no speech whatsoever.
Definitely hate speech.
I mean, it was archive
footage.
It was
from 1940s. Definitely hate speech.
Eastern Front war footage.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, that was somehow hate speech. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. It makes no sense.
No.
The funny thing is, as well, they use the defense of, well, advertisers don't want to be on controversial videos. And our YouTube channels have been demonetized and they're still running ads on them. We just don't make any money. YouTube does. So there's a perverse incentive there for them to demonetize
somebody's advertising on it then. And if they don't want to advertise it, that's fine. Just let me still have the video up.
Right. Yeah. I'd still take it.
Yeah.
Without any,
And it's also worth mentioning, finally, that Facebook is one of the competitors of Twitter, as the recent spats with Elon Musk and Zuckerberg have suggested. And yes, they pretty much censored anybody that the Biden administration had told them to. And they've got the quote, "We didn't ask questions." And again, we move on to this final one here. Zuckerberg says establishment asked Facebook to censor COVID misinfo that ended up true, and it undermines trust. Yeah, you don't say.
Yeah, just a bit.
Yeah.
But this is why it's so important. Hopefully, I've highlighted why this sort of thing is necessary. And even if Elon doesn't follow through, which I'd be very disappointed in him for doing, but I think he's got the money to do so, something like this needs to exist, because I think one of the best ways to hold the government to account isn't using government apparatuses, because, of course, the checks and balances don't always work as intended, as can be seen in many political systems. It can be the private sector, and I think that that's actually a very good avenue. But, of course, we should be doing whatever we can to push for what we believe in. And so I'll take pretty much anything I can get at the minute. I'm not necessarily picky. I'm not in the position politically to choose. But hopefully some good news.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Epoch series, this episode on the War of the Spanish Succession. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.